G'day team, and welcome back. Rightio, so let's crack on with part 2 of the Tamiya Beaufighter build. In part 1 we went through the construction and the painting. Now let's crack on with some weathering and making a little bit of North Sea for the base. So first up is just a pin wash on the panel lines with AK burnt umber. When this was dry, just using a cotton bud, just got rid of any excess, just trying to keep it in the direction of the airflow. In part 1 we talked a little about how Coastal Command aircraft tended to have a more grimy, weathered look than a lot of other aircraft. So now we're going with how I tried to achieve that. So this was the longest part of the weathering process. For the build-up of grime around the panel lines, I used a similar technique to what I used with getting dust and dirt on the Staghound in my last couple of videos, so using oils. Working 1 or 2 panels at a time. First off, I just moistened them up a little bit with a little bit of odorless thinner, and then using a mix of AK bitumen and industrial earth oils, worked the oils in and around the edges of the panel. Now for the white man magic that I think really makes this pop. So using just a piece of kitchen sponge, moistened with a bit of thinner, I clean up the oils, going from inside the panel out, leaving just the oil I want. You also get that nice grimy mottling from the sponge with the oils. After this, I just clean up any excess with a good old cotton bud. Working a couple of panels at a time, I repeated this over the entire aircraft, but focusing mainly on the upper surfaces of the wings, and especially around the engines. In a few areas, I repeated the process a couple of times on individual panels, just to get them looking a bit more grimy and dirty. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this result. I wanted to have more of a build-up of oil and grease and grime around the engines. So with a flat brush, moistened with a bit of thinner, I just pushed some of that excess oils back in around the engine. So this was pretty time consuming, probably around 6 or 7 hours over a couple of sittings. I think the result is worth the time, and it matched in pretty well with some of the reference photos I found. I let it sit for a day or so, then gave her a coat of SMS clear gloss to lock everything in. So in accordance with my reference, the chipping was kept fairly restrained. Just a fine brush and some AK flat aluminium. So you can see a sneaky little bit of exhaust poking through there. I replaced the kit parts with the Red Roo Models resin porcupine exhaust. First painted with SMS Surfs to Black, then just weathered with a couple of different tones of oil. Rightio, let's do some streaking. So the streaking on this kit is done more to complement the dirt and grime than be its own standalone effect. Both use some oils and then streak them with a brush moistened with a bit of thinner. Once again, kept it pretty restrained, focusing around the engines. So a few years ago I bought a set of AK weathering pencils and I haven't used them a huge amount. So I thought I'd give them a bit of a crack with this. So using a light grey, I used them for a little bit of highlights and also just some small subtle chipping around a few areas. So this is targets down, patch out for the weathering of the aircraft. Now we'll move on to some other bits and pieces. So the Observer's Browning machine gun. I replaced the barrel with one from Eduard. To give the bow the in-flight look, I used the Metallic Details 148 rotating propeller Type 2 blur effect. These are some flat photo etch pieces that attach to the prop hub. So after I removed the blades from the prop, I just drilled a small hole in the hub. Thankfully not stabbing myself in the finger this time. With a bit of CA, glued each of the blurred blades in. The whole assembly was given first off a coat of SMS Surfs to Black. After that, the hub was painted with gloss black and the blades black in the middle, and then various just coats of different greys sort of fading in and out for the blurred effect. To finish it up, just a light coat of yellow for the blade tips. So the Torpedo has these nice big holes to be mounted to the underside of the model. So it's filled them with some styrene, sanded off, and we cracked on with painting. As per normal, she started with a coat of SMS Surfs to Black, then I did some mottling with some white. After that, the whole thing received several light coats of SMS steel. Looking at some reference, the tail section of the Torpedo seemed to be a slightly darker colour, so I masked that off and sprayed some SMS gunmetal. Then to finish her off, the nose was masked off and sprayed initially with SMS Cark Black, and then just highlighted with a bit of Cark Black mixed with a grey colour. So during the period that this build's representing, being 44, British air-launched torpedoes had the Mark.X airtail attached. This was basically a little plywood wing to stabilise the torpedo in flight. It was designed to, when it hit the water, it'd fall off. Conveniently, I've got the ICM Beaufort sitting in the stash, which has a Mark.X airtail, so I threw that one on. Rightio, now it's time to move on with the base and a little bit of North Sea. So I found this rather daunting. I've done small bits of standing water before for AFV dioramas, but never tackled anything like this. Let's crack on. So I started with a piece of 50mm thick XPS foam board that I picked up from Bunnings and marked out where I wanted the torpedo. Also just added some balsa around the side as a bit of a border and cut an angle in the front for the nameplate. So I'm going to be using aluminium foil to get sort of the texture and the waves going. I'd love to claim this idea. The video how to make a realistic ocean diorama base on the channel Scaleton, link in the description, is what gave me the plan for this. So I rolled up some aluminium foil and used it to shape where I wanted the bigger splashes and waves and, what's a nautical term, bigger bits of water. So a couple big sets of waves and around the torpedo. This was attached with white glue. So with the foil down as the uppy wave bit, I then used my Dremel just to dig out the downy bit, or as Google tells me, the trough of the wave, just to add a bit of depth. Once this was all dry, over the top of everything, attached with a lot of white glue, I added a couple sheets of aluminium foil, pushed down nice and deep into the troughs and over the waves, and helps give that nice sort of crinkly water texture. This was then covered with a generous layer of Mod Podge, just to seal everything in, and given a decent whack of time to dry. On to painting the water. First off, I hit it with a base coat of grey acrylic primer, followed by the first coat of blue. All the blue tones are either Tamiya or AK acrylics. The first coat you could class as the mid-tone. This was sprayed all over with a few more coats on the forward faces of the waves and the deeper areas. Once this was dry, it was given a couple coats of micro scale micro gloss. So between each layer of blue tones, a couple layers of gloss were thrown down. Next, with a darker tone of blue, sprayed in the troughs and just up a little bit in the rear faces of the waves. If I had my time again, I would probably use more of an angry grey colour than a blue, so I think it looks a little bit Pacific-y at times. And that's it. It's just 2 tones of paint in a lot of thin layers and a lot of gloss in between. Next, to add a bit more texture, I use some acrylic gel medium, just applied with a wide, old, crappy brush across most of the base. So the next bit was actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And that is to get that white rolling ocean, foamy sort of look. So to do this, I just used a bit of acrylic gel medium mixed with some cheap white paint. I applied it across the top of the waves, a little bit down the back, and just in a few other areas. Then with a brush moistened with a bit of water, I just diluted it and pushed it around until I got the effect I was after. So when you throw something in the water, it makes a splash. So now I need to replicate that for the torpedo. This is one part of this build I'm not over the moon about, but it's passable. So for this I use some cotton wool, just stretch right out, and some UV cure resin. So basically I stretch the cotton wool out over a cylinder, this one being a Tamiya paint bottle, put the resin over the top nice and thin, and then hit it with the UV light to dry it out. After that, cut it to size and applied it around the torpedo where it's hitting the water. It was secured with a little bit of UV cure resin and then hit with the light to cure it all up. If anyone's got some comments or some tips and tricks as far as making a splash go, please throw it in the comments. Well, team, we're on the home stretch. Once the torp was mounted, that's the North Sea base finished. The bolster around the outside was just given a hit with some cheap black acrylic paint, and the whole thing was mounted to a piece of pine, just with a stain on it so it looks all fancy. The final bit of the bow was the aerial, which was added using AK high elastic stretch rigging. Now, mounting the bow in the flying position was just a piece of 5mm round clear acrylic, just heated up and bedded into the shape I wanted, and secured through the tail wheel bay of the bow with a lot of hot glue. Well, I've really enjoyed this build. It took me just over 3 weeks, as opposed to my usual 3 months for a build. Good thing I had a bit more time on my hands at the moment. Kit itself, it's a Tamiya kit. Not much more needs to be said. It goes together well. One of the big things I enjoyed was digging into a little bit of Aussie and Kiwi Second World War history that isn't that well known. Well, team, I hope you enjoyed the videos. Hope you might have gotten something out of it. If you did, please like and subscribe. And you know what time it is. Crack a beer, relax, and cue the dramatic music.